the history that links Morocco to Iceland.
Because this is an important part of the history of Salé, if you think about it.
How did you perceive the feedback from the audience, which was mostly composed of people from Salé?
Some of them did not know anything at all about the Salé rate in Iceland.
Would people from Salé be welcome in Iceland, and particularly in the cities where the Corsaires carried out their raids?
We would like to see people from Salé coming to Iceland.
Slaouis raids were less dramatic, but dramatic anyway, than the raids from the Ottoman Regency of Algeria.
That raid was did not take as many captives as on the Algerian raid on the Westman Island and in East Iceland.
Do you hope to achieve with this conference maybe to build bridges between Iceland and Salé?
I have been working on this project for 30 years, writing this book, and I hope it will build bridges and friendship between Morocco and Iceland.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be back with you in the program. This program will be very special. We will be talking in English. And the theme of the program will be the raids of the Salé Corsaires in Iceland in 1627. And to discuss this part of the history that links Morocco to Iceland in general, and Salé and some Icelandic cities in particular, I'm pleased to have Karl Smari Hreinsson with me today, an Icelandic author and academic. Karl, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
So it's customary on this program to introduce the guest, so that's what I'll do now. You hold a master's degree in Icelandic language and literature from the University of Iceland. You studied linguistics at Lund University in Sweden and completed advanced teacher training at Boston University. You were an adjunct professor of Icelandic language and culture at the University of Maryland at the United States. And you became an independent Icelandic scholar and author, known for your work on the history of the Barbary raids in Iceland in 1627. You are also the owner and director of the Saga Academy, an independent language school in Iceland. And your research has resulted in the publication of several books. I have some of them. And the latest one is, I will say it in French, La Razzia septentrionale, l'histoire des raids corsaires barbarex de Salé et d'Alger sur l'Islande en 1627. But you also translated many other books, and one of them is Les Voyages du Révérend Olafur Egilson, and we will talk about this reverend later. There are other books and documentaries. My first question, if you may, Karl, you are here in Morocco because you were invited to Salé to give a lecture on the shared history between Salé and some cities in Iceland. How did you perceive the feedback from the audience, which was mostly composed of people from Salé?
Well, my feeling is that they are very interested, and not only interested, they did not know much about it, or some of them did not know anything at all about the Salé raid in Iceland. So there was some interaction. Do you feel that people yesterday they learned much about what happened in both sides? I mean, yes, and I think they were very surprised, and because this is an important part of the history of Salé, if you think about it, and also an important part of our history in Iceland.
Okay, my second question is about the perception of these raids within Icelandic communities. Are there any specific annual commemorations? Are these celebrations rather somber, sad, or are there any particular characteristic of the celebrations in Iceland?
There were two raids.
one from Salé, one Morocco, and one from Algiers. We tend to say in Iceland, we talk about one rate. We tend to say this was one rate. People until now have not divided these two rates into two rates. And the rate on the Westman Island from Algiers was much, much bigger. They remember the rate much more than in other places in Iceland. And each summer they try to have a conference, something to remember the rate.
So there is a Remembrance Day every year about that?
They have had conferences, they have published books, articles, etc. And they normally try to have these days around the 16th, 17th, 18th of July. Normally that weekend, around mid or July every year, because the raid on the Westman Island took place around that time of the year.
I have a question before getting into the history and the story. This question is related to the previous one. Would people from Salé be welcome in Iceland, and particularly in the cities where the Corsair carried out their raids?
Of course, and more than welcome. I think we would like to see people from Salé coming to Iceland. It's no hard feeling. I mean, we like foreigners, and especially if they come because of mutual interest and story.
Sure. Let's return now to the history and the story. The Moriscos, that are the Muslim, that were expelled from Spain, they were expelled after the Reconquista Wars, and the exodus, or rather the expulsion of Muslims from Spain, accelerated after the fall of Granada in 1492. And the expel became more severe following decrees promulgated between September 22, 1609 and January 19, 1610. Some of these Moriscos end up in Salé, and for them, Salé was the ideal place to start their campaigns against Christians as acts of revenge. In some historical books in Morocco, this is called the Maritime Jihad. And they initially targeted Spanish interest. That was the first target, before extending their campaign activities to all European maritime interest. And when the plunder was not enough at sea, the Corsaires of Salé did not hesitate to launch daring raids on the coast and inland, seizing everything they can or they could. So that is what happened, actually, off the coast of Iceland in the middle of 1627. And yesterday in your lecture, you mentioned that the sailor who led these Slaouis raids was Dutch. Murad Reis. Reis means the captain. Murad Reis was his name after converting to Islam. How do you explain this? Did you find in your research other names of sailors who were with him in the raids? I'm talking here about Moroccan names. Did you find any Moroccan names?
Well, we have known it all the time. His name, Murad Reis, or some spelled very similar as Murad or Murad Reis. We have known it for 400 years. It's nothing new. We have documents written down even very shortly after the raid, 1627, which writes his name. We knew it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, responding to my previous question, that the Slaouis raids were less dramatic, but dramatic anyway, than the raids from the Ottoman Regency of Algeria. Can you elaborate on that, please, more?
Yes. Murad Reis, Jan Jansson van Haarlem, as his Dutch name was, he had only one ship, and that ship was rather small. He decided to raid on Grindavik, which had no defense. And then he tried to raid on Bessastaðir, the site of the Danish government at that time, but he did not have succeed there. The reason he had rather small ship was because he came from Salé. Salé Corsair could not have big ships because of the sand reef outside the river mouth of the river here. To cross the sand reef, the sandbar, you had to have a smaller ship. So this means that his crew was also much smaller than the raid from Algiers on the Westman Island. They had 2 ships originally and then 3 ships, and much bigger ship. And this explains why Murad Reis did not take as many captives as on the Westman, the Algerian raid on the Westman Island and in East Iceland. It was the situation here in Salé which limited his ability to make a raid in Iceland. But he also had to be very careful. He was a careful man, a pirate, or I should say corsair, because he had license, or pre-water, he had a license to be a pirate. He had to be very careful because he had only one small ship. He could not have any shelter from other ships.
Okay. Something to add, maybe?
No. I think this explains
the difference between both. Okay.
The difference between Algerian corsairs and the Algerian raid on the Westman Island in East Iceland, where they captured more than 400 people, and the Salé raid in Grindavik.
Okay, and where were the captive? I mean, getting the ships first, and then sold in slaves market in North Africa. That was the deal. I mean, initially.
That was the deal. It was pure business, nothing else than business.
Okay.
There might have been an element of jihad in this, but for people like Murad Reis, it was just money. It was just business. And
sad business.
Business anyway. It was a business, and these poor people, they were sold on the slave market. And not only sold on the slave market to be slaves, it was even more important if somebody back in Iceland or other countries could send money to ransom these people. That was more profitable business, to capture somebody who had a rich family background and have that family back home to ransom, to send money over. So, business.
Okay, I see. Karl, yourself, you are descendant from a family that suffered this raid. What family legacy do you retain from these raids? The family legacy you are keeping in mind with your, the member of your family, what they kept in mind from these raids?
I have to be honest, I did not know that I was descendant of one of the slave and one of the men who actually wrote his memoir about the slavery in Salé until rather recently. I think it is less than 1 year that I stumbled across that I was a direct descendant of that man. But I'm proud of him. He was a very tough guy. He came back to Iceland and he continued his life. He became important figure in Iceland. He had children. Even he had a terrible life in Salé, absolutely terrible. He was mutilated by some reason, meaning they cut off his ear and nose.
Horrible.
Yes.
Sad story. And yesterday, during the lecture, you mentioned that in 2027 you will be organizing a major event to commemorate this period of history in Iceland. Can you tell us more about this event, please?
Well, in Grindavik, they have a historical society. Also on the Westman Island, they have a historical society which is actually named 1627 Historical Society, only to remember the date. They are planning to have international conference on the Westman Island in Reykjavik on the 17th and 18th of July 2027. International conference where scholars from abroad will be invited to have a talk about their research. And of course, we would like to see other people as well attending this conference.
People from Salé, especially.
Especially from Salé and Algeria, if possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And don't forget, we have scholars all around the world who have, in one way or another, done some research on this rate.
And what do you hope to achieve with this conference? Maybe to build bridges between Iceland and Salé?
Yeah, we can, yes, to build bridges between Iceland and Salé and Algiers and Holland, the Netherlands, because they are all around in this story. We should never forget that both the pirate captains, the Corsair captains in Salé, Jan Jansson, Van Harlem, who became Murat Reis, and Murat Flamengo, who was the captain and the admiral of the Algerian raid. These guys, they were Dutch captains. They were Dutch renegades. They had operated out of Holland originally, or the Netherlands. Both of them turned Turk, as we say in Icelandic. They became Muslim and they operated from North Africa. So, and you know that the Dutch were they had the best captains, the best sailors at this time in Europe. They were so we would very much like to see some Dutch or scholars from the Netherlands as well.
Okay. I have a question regarding Iceland. The Moroccan people, they don't know much about Iceland. What a couple of things you can tell about Iceland to describe your country and maybe encourage Moroccans who are avid travelers and the people of Salé in particular to visit your country. Especially since we know that there is no visa requirement between our two countries. So what should we keep in mind about Iceland?
Well, you should keep in mind that the Atlantic Ocean connects us in one way or another. It's and that's what we have in common. We don't have many other things in common, maybe. And if you want to visit Iceland, you will have probably a colder climate than here during the summertime. And you will see totally different things: the landscape, the volcanoes, the geysers, the old culture we have. There are so many things to see in Iceland that I really would like to see people from Morocco in Iceland.
Okay, Karl, we have reached the end of this program, and it's customary to give the last word to the guest. As the program is called the last word, le dernier mot. The camera is in front of you, and you have the floor. What will be your last word, please?
I have been working on this project for 30 years, writing this book, and I hope it will build bridges and friendship between Morocco and Iceland.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for this very positive exchange that reflect a strong desire to build bridges between Morocco and Iceland, in general between Salé and some towns that suffered raids from the Salé Corsair. in turn, I invite the people of Iceland, and I tell them that they are welcome in Salé also, thank you again for being with us and to share this insight about your work to talk about this part of our common history. Thank you very much.
I will say it in Icelandic. Takk fyrir, takk kærlega.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention, and until next time, stay safe and happy. Bye-bye.